September 18, 1944, opened beneath a dense Lorraine fog, where General Hassan Montefiore studied his maps with renewed confidence. For the first time in months, the front suggested opportunity rather than collapse. A fleeting chance to strike back against Patton's overextended Third Army. Victory was unlikely, yet local success still seemed mathematically possible. Montefiore was 51 years old, seasoned rather than ideological, shaped by armored warfare in Russia and North Africa. He understood attrition, collapse, and retreat, having witnessed entire armies dissolve under pressure. Unlike many commanders, he measured war through logistics, fuel, terrain, and timing, believing disciplined calculation could still produce results even as Germany bled on two fronts. Under his authority stood the 113th Panzer Brigade, a formation untouched by Normandy's devastation. These were not patched remnants dragged from defeat, but fresh units assembled directly from factories. Their presence alone altered the equation, offering concentration where other German sectors suffered dilution, exhaustion, and mechanical ruin from months of relentless Allied pressure. The brigade's core strength lay in 58 brand-new Panther tanks, machines designed for dominance on the Western Front. Their engines were pristine, armor unscarred, optics factory clear. Some crews were inexperienced, still mastering turret coordination, yet doctrine promised that superior steel and firepower could compensate for incomplete battlefield seasoning. Montefiore evaluated the Panther with cold certainty, comparing it against the American Sherman with professional detachment. The Panther's 75mm gun could destroy Shermans from 2,000 meters, while its sloped frontal armor routinely deflected American shells. On paper, this imbalance suggested inevitability, reinforcing German faith in technological superiority as a battlefield equalizer. Fuel allocations strengthened his confidence further, with 600,000 liters assigned for intensive operations. 2 days of maneuver warfare lay within reach, sufficient time to deliver a decisive blow. German planners calculated movement, engagement, and withdrawal precisely, believing that speed and concentration could shatter Patton's exposed spearheads before American reserves reacted. The objective appeared elegant in its simplicity: strike Patton's right flank, rupture supply lines, isolate forward armored elements, then destroy them sequentially. Patton's army stretched across immense distances, fuel convoys strained, units dispersed along a wide front. Classical doctrine dictated that concentrated armor against such extension would create crisis and paralysis. Montefiore trusted surprise implicitly, assuming American intelligence remained unaware of the brigade assembling within Lorraine's forests. Fog promised concealment during approach marches, masking engine noise and movement. In his calculations, weather served as an ally, protecting German assembly areas while preserving the Panther's lethal range advantage once contact was established. What he failed to consider was how fog reshaped combat geometry entirely. Long-range gunnery demanded visibility, and without it the Panther's greatest strength vanished instantly. Armor thickness mattered less when engagements collapsed into close-range chaos, where reaction speed, coordination, and flexibility outweighed theoretical ballistic supremacy taught in pre-war manuals. German doctrine remained anchored in lessons of earlier campaigns, where visibility allowed deliberate engagement and methodical destruction. Montefiore's reasoning belonged to that framework, assuming combat unfolded along predictable distances. The battlefield awaiting him operated under different rules, shaped by American adaptability, decentralized command, and aggressive exploitation of fleeting tactical advantages. As the brigade's lead elements began their approach, fog thickened into a suffocating wall. Visibility shrank from hundreds of meters to mere yards, reducing commanders to silhouettes and engine noise. Inside steel halls, crews strained through periscopes, unaware that the conditions they welcomed were silently dismantling every advantage they believed decisive. By the time German engines rolled forward, Montefiore's perfect calculation had already failed invisibly. The mathematics of armor and gun caliber dissolved inside the mist, replaced by uncertainty and vulnerability. What awaited the Panthers was not a textbook armored breakthrough, but a brutal encounter shaped by speed, confusion, and American doctrine Germany never truly understood. The 113th Panzer Brigade represented Hitler's final answer to collapse, a mobile reserve designed to restore initiative through sudden armored violence. It was conceived as a fire brigade, rushed wherever crises emerged, meant to shock advancing enemies and reassert German control through concentrated, technologically superior force applied at decisive moments. Unlike exhausted divisions retreating from Normandy, this brigade arrived intact, freshly organized, and lavishly equipped. Its tanks came directly from assembly lines, not repair depots, carrying factory paint and unscarred armor. For German commanders starved of resources, such a formation felt almost miraculous, a reminder of what the Wehrmacht once represented. The Panther tanks formed the brigade's spine, embodying German engineering ambition. With sloped armor, powerful optics, and a high-velocity gun, the Panther was intended to dominate open-terrain battles. In theory, it could destroy American armor long before return fire proved effective, reinforcing confidence among planners desperate for asymmetric advantage. Yet the brigade's freshness masked hidden weaknesses, particularly among crews lacking combat seasoning. Many tankers had trained extensively but never fought under fire, never navigated chaos, fear, or sudden loss. German doctrine assumed machines could compensate for experience, overlooking how battlefield intuition only emerges through survival and adaptation. The brigade's organizational structure emphasized speed and concentration, reflecting lessons drawn from earlier blitzkrieg successes. Independent battalions, self-contained support elements, and flexible command chains allowed rapid deployment. On maps, this structure promised decisive action, enabling commanders to strike exposed enemy formations before cohesive resistance formed. Fuel allocations reinforced the illusion of control, granting the brigade operational freedom rare by late 1944. 2 days of sustained maneuver appeared sufficient to unhinge American advances. German planners calculated kilometers, hours, and consumption rates meticulously, believing precise logistics could temporarily offset overwhelming Allied industrial superiority. Hitler's strategic faith in such brigades bordered on obsession, viewing them as instruments of will rather than mere units. He believed concentrated excellence could reverse strategic collapse, ignoring how systemic shortages crippled Germany's capacity to exploit tactical successes. The brigade thus carried expectations far exceeding its actual strategic weight. For officers like Montefiore, the brigade symbolized rational opportunity rather than ideological fantasy. He understood it could not win the war, but might create localized success, disrupt American momentum, and buy time. In a collapsing system, buying time became the highest achievable objective, replacing dreams of decisive victory. The brigade's mission demanded aggression without hesitation, striking hard before enemy intelligence responded. Delay meant exposure, dispersion, and annihilation by Allied air and artillery. Speed was therefore essential, compressing decision cycles until opponents reacted too late. German doctrine depended on initiative, yet initiative now rested on fragile assumptions. American forces represented a fundamentally different enemy than those faced earlier in the war. Their command structures encouraged initiative at lower levels, enabling rapid responses to unexpected threats. The brigade's planners underestimated this flexibility, assuming American reactions would mirror slower, centralized European command traditions. As the Panthers assembled, confidence spread through German ranks, bolstered by steel and fuel rather than strategic reality. Crews believed themselves elite, entrusted with Germany's last armored hope. This psychological elevation mattered, yet it also narrowed perception, encouraging overconfidence and discouraging adaptation once conditions deviated from expectations. Thus, the 113th Panzer Brigade advanced burdened by symbolism as much as armor. It was Hitler's last fire brigade, tasked with extinguishing flames engulfing the Reich. What it carried into battle was not merely tanks, but the weight of a collapsing doctrine still convinced technology could substitute for time, experience, and strategic depth. Patton's Third Army in September 1944 stretched across France like an exposed blade, fast, aggressive, and dangerously thin. Supply columns lagged hundreds of kilometers behind spearheads racing eastward. Maps at headquarters showed progress lines surging forward. Yet beneath those arrows lay vulnerability created by speed itself. Fuel shortages dictated daily decisions, forcing armored units to pause not from enemy resistance but empty tanks. Patton accepted this risk, believing momentum itself was protection. Every halted column invited German recovery. Thus he pushed formations forward, gambling that disruption and audacity would paralyze defenders before they recognized American logistical fragility. The Third Army front spanned nearly 180 kilometers, an extraordinary width for sustained offensive operations. Units often advanced beyond mutual support, separated by gaps only thin reconnaissance screens covered. German planners observing these maps saw not brilliance, but invitation, A flank extended so far it tempted counterstroke despite overall strategic collapse. Patton's command philosophy encouraged initiative, rewarding commanders who seized ground without waiting orders. This culture produced speed, yet also uneven coordination. Some combat commands surged ahead while neighbors struggled, creating salients jutting into uncertain territory. On German situation maps, these salients appeared as targets begging isolation and destruction. Intelligence reports warned of enemy concentrations forming eastward, yet Patton discounted their scale. Previous encounters suggested German armor was shattered, incapable of organized counterattack. What remained, he believed, were fragments easily brushed aside by aggressive maneuver. This assumption, reasonable weeks earlier, now underestimated Berlin's desperate last reserves. Terrain further complicated matters as forests, rolling fields, and narrow road networks constrained movement. Supply convoys funneled through predictable routes, vulnerable to interdiction. German officers studying aerial photographs identified choke points where a swift armored thrust might sever lifelines, sustaining Patton as forward elements, turning speed into liability. Despite these dangers, morale within Third Army remained fierce and confident. Soldiers believed themselves unstoppable, veterans of Normandy breakout and rapid pursuit across France. This confidence fueled Patton's calculus, reinforcing belief that psychological dominance outweighed material risk. He trusted enemy hesitation more than his own fuel gauges. Operational orders emphasized continuous pressure, even when objectives exceeded logistical prudence. Patton viewed pauses as moral failures, moments allowing German recovery. He preferred advancing on fumes rather than consolidating, convinced disruption itself shortened wars. This mindset shaped the overstretched German commanders now assessed with growing interest and cautious optimism. German reconnaissance detected dispersed American armor lacking depth, a condition ideal for concentrated counterattack. Unlike earlier encounters, this opportunity involved fresh units, not retreating remnants. For once, German calculations aligned favorably, at least on paper, suggesting a localized strike could wound the seemingly invincible Third Army. Patton's headquarters understood risk, yet accepted it as operational necessity. The race toward Germany's borders demanded relentless pressure, and Patton believed fortune favored the bold. What he could not fully measure was how environmental conditions and enemy adaptation might neutralize advantages he assumed permanent and unassailable. Thus, the overstretch appeared simultaneously as brilliance and weakness, a paradox defining Patton's art of war. Maps showed opportunity differently depending on perspective. To Americans, it meant imminent victory through speed. To Germans, it marked a fleeting chance to punish audacity with concentrated steel and surprise. In this tension between motion and exposure, fate narrowed. Patton's extended lines offered Germans their last credible opening on the Western Front. Whether it would become redemption or annihilation depended on factors no map could fully capture, including weather, reaction time, and the unpredictable violence of close combat. A dense autumn fog settled over Lorraine, flattening distance and swallowing landmarks, transforming armored doctrine into uncertainty. Crews trained for kilometer engagements suddenly faced visibility measured in yards. Optical sights meant nothing, range tables became useless, and the battlefield contracted into a claustrophobic maze where advantage dissolved into instinct. German superiority relied on sight, calculation, and first-shot dominance. Panthers were engineered to kill before being threatened, but fog erased that equation entirely. Without long-range visibility, armor thickness and gun caliber lost relevance, replaced by confusion, hesitation, and fragmented perception inside steel halls advancing blindly forward. Commanders peered through periscopes showing only gray emptiness, unable to orient formations or maintain intervals. Radios crackled with overlapping reports, lacking reference points. Units drifted, columns compressed, and doctrine demanding coordinated thrusts unraveled. The fog was not merely weather, it was an invisible enemy disrupting every rehearsed assumption. Gunners trained for deliberate fire now faced fleeting shapes, shadows that vanished instantly. Range estimation became guesswork, increasing hesitation. Every second of delay surrendered initiative. The Panthers' theoretical lethality demanded calm identification, yet fog forced frantic reaction, undermining confidence crews depended upon when advancing aggressively into contested ground. Situational awareness collapsed first at the edges, then at the center. Lead tanks could not see followers, commanders lost sense of direction, and preplanned routes blurred into indistinguishable tracks. Maps became symbolic rather than practical tools, as terrain features disappeared behind a uniform wall of moisture and uncertainty. Fog compressed time as well as space. Engagements began suddenly without warning at distances denying maneuver. There was no room to retreat or redeploy once contact occurred. German doctrine assumed controlled engagement zones. Yet here, every encounter became an ambush, stripping planners of sequential decision-making. The psychological effect was immediate and corrosive. Crews accustomed to dominance felt hunted, sensing threats everywhere, yet locating none. Hatches stayed closed, vision narrowed further, and fear magnified engine noise into imagined enemies. In such conditions, even elite formations reverted to defensive instincts while supposedly attacking. Fire discipline suffered as tension rose. Tanks fired at sound, movement, or suspicion, revealing positions unnecessarily. Muzzle flashes briefly illuminated silhouettes for opponents, turning strength into liability. In fog, aggression without clarity invited destruction, and disciplined restraint proved impossible amid mounting confusion. Coordination between armor and supporting elements failed entirely. Infantry lagged behind, artillery observers could not see targets, and air support vanished. The combined arms balance Germans relied upon fractured, leaving tanks isolated. Fog severed integration, converting a modern force into disconnected machines advancing without mutual protection. German expectations clashed violently with reality. Intelligence predicted surprise and decisive shock, yet fog neutralized surprise by making everyone blind equally. Superiority requires asymmetry, and here none existed. Instead, uncertainty ruled both sides, favoring whichever adapted fastest to chaos rather than technological advantage. As minutes passed, German initiative eroded further. Orders issued moments earlier lost relevance instantly. Units hesitated, waiting for clarity that never came. Momentum stalled not from enemy fire alone, but from commanders realizing their assumptions no longer matched conditions unfolding around them. Thus the fog reshaped battle logic completely, stripping Panthers of their designed purpose. Superiority remained on paper, but blindness rendered it theoretical. In this gray void, victory would belong not to heavier armor or longer guns, but to speed, improvisation, and the courage to exploit confusion first. Abrams studied the fog not as an obstacle, but as information, understanding weather could overturn doctrine faster than enemy fire. Where others saw blindness, he saw compression. Distances shrank, reactions mattered more than calculations, and speed replaced range as the decisive variable shaping survival and lethality within armored combat. He recognized immediately that Panther superiority depended on vision and standoff distance. Fog annihilated both. German gunners could not exploit optics or ballistics, while American crews accustomed to improvisation thrived in chaos. Abrams understood doctrine was only powerful when conditions allowed it to function. Instead of withdrawing, Abrams leaned forward mentally, recalibrating assumptions under pressure. He accepted that armor thickness no longer guaranteed safety, while thinly protected vehicles could dominate through agility. This mental pivot separated commanders trapped by theory from those willing to let environment dictate tactics dynamically. Abrams grasped that fog equalized fear, neutralizing intimidation inherent in German armor reputation. Panthers were terrifying at range, but monstrous silhouettes lost menace when unseen. What mattered now was initiative, flank access, and the ability to fire first within seconds of contact. He ordered dispersion rather than concentration, breaking predictable formations into fluid elements. Small units could react faster, exploit sound, and reposition unseen. Doctrine manuals never described such fighting. Yet Abrams trusted trained crews to adapt instinctively within loose guidance rather than rigid control. Speed became protection. Abrams emphasized movement after every shot, denying Germans stable targets. Fog hid displacement, allowing American vehicles to appear unexpectedly on flanks. This constant motion disrupted German attempts to orient, multiplying confusion already seeded by weather and collapsing cohesion further. Abrams also recognized communication simplicity mattered. Short, direct radio calls replaced elaborate coordination. Crews reported contact directions, not precise grids. Doctrine adjusted in real time, prioritizing clarity over completeness, enabling rapid collective response without paralyzing deliberation. He anticipated German hesitation, knowing Panther crews were conditioned for long-range engagements. Close combat forced split-second decisions unfamiliar to them. Abrams exploited this psychological lag, trusting aggressive movement to overwhelm opponents still searching for confirmation before firing. Terrain awareness replaced map reliance. Abrams used roads, hedges, and sound cues rather than plotted routes. Fog turned navigation into sensory experience, rewarding those who listened carefully. Doctrine bent again, as battlefield intuition replaced pre-planned maneuver corridors. Abrams also trusted subordinate initiative implicitly. He understood centralized control would fail in limited visibility. Junior commanders were empowered to engage independently, transforming American formations into adaptive swarms rather than linear advances vulnerable to disruption. This approach reflected Abrams' broader philosophy. War rewarded thinkers faster than planners. Fog merely exposed that truth brutally. Abrams read conditions accurately, accepting uncertainty as constant rather than exception, aligning decisions with reality rather than expectation. In that gray morning, doctrine did not disappear, it evolved. Abrams fused training with observation, turning weather into ally. His understanding transformed fog from liability into weapon, proving adaptability could defeat technical superiority when commanders read reality honestly and acted without hesitation. Fog swallowed the column as engines growled. The lead Panther advancing blind into sound and shadow without sight lines, range tables, or confidence promised by steel. American guns waited silently. Crews counting seconds, tracking vibrations through hulls. Understanding surprise mattered more than armor when distances collapsed to moments of sudden violence. The first shot struck from the flank, punching through side armor. The Panther erupting without warning as doctrine evaporated under proximity and panic in seconds. No muzzle flash betrayed the shooters. Fog smothered visibility and German crews died confused, believing they faced heavies rather than agile hunters circling unseen nearby. Another Panther burned, then another. Impacts arriving faster than comprehension as radios filled with overlapping cries lacking bearings. Orders or authority amid sudden rolling chaos. Commanders popped hatches seeking clarity, exposing themselves to machine gun fire. The fog turning bravery into liability within heartbeats of close-range, unseen American positions. German formations unraveled quickly, spacing collapsed, columns bunched, and initiative vanished as training for distance fights failed catastrophically at arm's length under choking gray fog. American vehicles darted between lanes, firing once then relocating, using sound and instinct to maintain pressure while denying retaliation through movement, confusion, shock, and terror. Panthers attempted counterfire blindly, shells screaming into nothing. Precious ammunition wasted as targets slipped laterally beyond guesswork amid thick fog, roaring engines, fractured nerves. Everywhere. Each American hit multiplied fear, crews imagined encirclement. Unaware they faced small teams exploiting timing rather than mass within the battlefield, moments, sounds, and echoes. One by one, Panthers fell silent, engines dying before gunners understood angles. American rounds finding seams relentlessly through side armor. Turrets, plates, amid fog, alone. Survivors tried withdrawing, reversing clumsily in columns. Collisions compounding losses as command cohesion disintegrated rapidly, under fire, confusion, panic, smoke, noise, darkness, fear, pressure, everywhere. American crews communicated minimally, trusting prearranged cues, movement discipline, and mutual awareness to keep momentum steady. Aggressive, lethal, forward, motion, alive. Decisive, now, today. Here, the fog became accomplice, masking approach vectors and escape routes, enabling repeated strikes without exposure against superior guns. Thicker armor shocked crews nearby, unseen, helpless. German radio nets collapsed under contradiction, reports conflicting, bearings meaningless, pleas unanswered as headquarters grasped too late amid fog, losses, panic, screams, static, confusion. Everywhere. Doctrine offered no refuge, checklists failed, and assumptions about dominance died alongside crews trapped inside burning steel during sudden close. Brutal encounters, unseen, fast, lethal. American gunners aimed instinctively, firing at sound and silhouette, exploiting thinner flanks with disciplined aggression amid fog. Smoke, movements, speed, chaos, fear, tension, pressure. Now. Hits were decisive. Panthers lacked time to respond, seconds determining life or death repeatedly within this compressed battlefield. Fog-bound, violent, sudden, relentless, unforgiving moments everywhere. Some German crews abandoned vehicles, fleeing into fog, only to encounter infantry fire and capture along hedgerows, roads, ditches, fields, confused, wounded, terrified, exposed, helpless. The myth of invulnerability shattered audibly. Explosions echoing like punctuation marking an argument lost against speed, initiative, adaptation, weather, surprise, teamwork, courage, proximity, reality itself. American losses occurred, but tempo favored attackers. Momentum sustained through relentless movement and mutual support under fog. Fire, stress, uncertainty, pressure, speed, coordination, trust, initiative. Each burning Panther confirmed calculations. Fog had inverted power, making agility king over armor, range, prestige, doctrine, reputation, numbers, steel, planning, certainty, tradition, fear alone. When silence returned, the field told the story. Hulks smoldered where confidence once stood amid fog, wreckage, smoke, loss, confusion, disbelief, shock, ruin, defeat. Now. First contact ended illusions. Panthers had died quietly, and the battle's logic was rewritten permanently by fog, speed, adaptation, initiative, proximity, courage, timing, reality itself. Hellcats burst forward as fog thinned slightly, engines screaming with reckless intent, transforming speed into armor where steel could not protect survival. Crews understood mobility meant life, hesitation meant death, and every second saved denied German gunners time, range, confidence, and coordinated response in collapsing battle space around them everywhere. The M18 Hellcat was lightly armored, open-topped, and terrifyingly fast, designed for ambush rather than endurance under fire. In fog-bound chaos, it became ideal, slipping laterally between Panthers, firing once, vanishing instantly, denying enemies retaliation, comprehension, or stable targets during frantic seconds of close-range encounters everywhere around them. Hellcat platoons operated like hunters, spreading out, communicating through brief signals, trusting initiative over orders amid noise and smoke. Speed allowed choice, engagement angles, and withdrawal on demand, turning each vehicle into a fleeting threat that multiplied fear disproportionate to its actual firepower across the foggy battlefield. That morning suddenly, German crews struggled to respond, turrets traversing too slowly against targets already gone, radios clogged with panic and contradiction. Hellcats exploited thinner side armor relentlessly, striking where Panthers were weakest, never pausing to duel, never presenting themselves as stationary answers to superior guns amid fog, confusion, fear, chaos, shock, pressure. Speed rewrote engagement rules completely, allowing American crews to choose when violence occurred, then disengage before retaliation matured. Each burst of motion dislocated German expectations, compressing decision cycles until command paralysis set in, leaving heavy machines ineffective within a rapidly shifting, unforgiving, close combat environment defined by fog, panic, loss. Hellcat gunners fired sparingly, conserving ammunition while maximizing shock, aiming for engine decks, turret rings, exposed flanks. Speed ensured survival after each shot, relocation immediate, unpredictable, disorienting, creating illusions of overwhelming numbers where only small detachments maneuvered aggressively through smoke, and fog under intense pressure, fear, confusion, chaos, everywhere suddenly. German tactical doctrine expected armored duels at range, not swarming predators exploiting proximity and weather. Hellcats shattered these assumptions brutally, forcing Panthers into reactive postures where armor thickness meant nothing. Guns could not traverse quickly enough, and crews faced enemies they rarely saw amid fog, noise, confusion, fear, chaos, shock. Movement discipline separated survival from destruction. Hellcats coordinating arcs intuitively, never bunching, never lingering. Speed compensated for fragility, allowing American crews to dictate rhythm, tempo, and geometry of combat, bending engagements around momentum rather than brute force or static defensive positioning within fog. Chaos, fear, uncertainty, pressure, confusion, danger, everywhere. Each Hellcat crew understood risk intimately, armor thin, silhouettes tall, survival dependent on motion and teamwork. Yet confidence grew with every burning Panther, reinforcing belief that aggression and speed, properly applied, could dismantle supposedly superior machines under the right environmental conditions of fog. Terrain, surprise, timing, pressure, chaos, fear, reality. The battlefield became kinetic geometry, vectors of motion intersecting unpredictably as Hellcats flowed through gaps Panthers could not cover. German numerical superiority evaporated as concentration failed, vehicles isolated and destroyed piecemeal, victims of speed that nullified coordination, mass, and firepower advantages amid fog, confusion, panic, fear, chaos, pressure, noise, shock. Reports reaching German headquarters lagged reality, describing chaos without clarity, losses without explanation. Hellcats had transformed tactical space faster than command comprehension, rendering centralized control useless while decentralized American initiative thrived, exploiting fleeting opportunities measured in seconds rather than hours or plans under fog, pressure, confusion, fear, chaos, noise, everywhere. By the time fog lifted, the lesson was irreversible. Speed had become decisive weapon. Hellcats proved that in modern war, adaptability trumped specifications and initiative outweighed armor, leaving wreckage as testament to how motion, surprise, and tempo reshaped outcomes permanently amid chaos, fear, confusion, pressure, violence, loss, shock, history, reality. Radio traffic dissolved into chaos as Panthers burned unseen, commanders shouting fragments instead of orders, fear replacing doctrine within seconds. German crews reported enemies everywhere. Nowhere, voices overlapping in frantic desperation, destroying coordination faster than physical losses, turning disciplined formations into isolated machines reacting blindly amid fog, shock, confusion, noise, pressure, sudden violence closing distances mercilessly around them. Operators screamed grid references that no longer mattered, maps useless when visibility collapsed and units scattered. Requests for clarification clogged frequencies, delaying responses until opportunities vanished. Radios carried panic faster than shells, spreading psychological collapse through the brigade, ensuring every crew believed itself surrounded, hunted, abandoned, misunderstood, betrayed by assumptions forged in earlier wars now irrelevant under modern conditions. Command tanks struggled to impose control, antennas whipping as vehicles maneuvered desperately for safety. Each transmission contradicted the last: enemy left, enemy right, enemy behind, fostering paralysis. Orders arrived too late or not at all, severing the chain linking intent to action, leaving Panther crews fighting individual wars without shared awareness or coordinated purpose amid terror, confusion, fog, pressure, sudden loss. Fire discipline collapsed alongside communication. Panthers firing blindly into mist, wasting ammunition at imagined threats. Muzzle flashes revealed positions, inviting Hellcat strikes from unseen angles. Radios crackled with disbelief as losses mounted, crews unable to understand how superior machines were dying so quickly, so silently, without visible adversaries, shattering confidence in technology, training, leadership, destiny, survival, logic itself. German junior officers attempted initiative, but contradictory reports undermined trust, units refusing movement without confirmation that never came. The brigade's cohesion fractured irreversibly, mobility becoming liability rather than advantage. Radios transmitted despair, not solutions, accelerating collapse by convincing every isolated crew that destruction was inevitable, resistance futile, withdrawal impossible amid fog, chaos, noise, confusion, fear, shock, pressure, loss. Maintenance vehicles, fuel trucks, and support elements became unintended beacons. Engines audible through mist, drawing American attention. Desperate calls for resupply went unanswered, frequencies jammed by overlapping distress. The brigade's lifeblood clogged, its logistical spine snapped by confusion rather than enemy fire alone, amplifying panic as stranded crews faced immobility, encirclement, destruction without guidance or hope, certainty evaporating rapidly everywhere. Higher headquarters received fragments devoid of clarity, unable to distinguish exaggeration from reality. Reports of catastrophic losses conflicted with optimistic assumptions made hours earlier. Decision-makers hesitated, awaiting confirmation that never stabilized, allowing the tactical disaster to metastasize unchecked. Radios, meant to unify action, instead magnified uncertainty, ensuring the brigade bled itself out while command deliberated abstractly, disconnected from unfolding horror on the ground. Some Panther crews abandoned vehicles prematurely, convinced escape outweighed futile resistance. Radios recorded pleas for permission to withdraw, voices cracking under strain. Silence often followed, batteries dying, antennas shattered, operators killed. Each unanswered call deepened isolation, convincing survivors that leadership had vanished, leaving them prey to unseen hunters exploiting every pause, every mistake, every second of indecision ruthlessly, efficiently, methodically. German gunnery superiority meant nothing without targets, while American mobility exploited every lapse. Radios echoed with final messages, cut mid-sentence by explosions or gunfire. Psychological collapse preceded physical annihilation, as fear overwhelmed rational thought. The brigade ceased functioning as a coherent force, becoming scattered wreckage, linked only by shared panic, transmitted over failing frequencies during relentless, disorienting combat in fog-bound fields. Attempts to regroup failed repeatedly, assembly points unreachable under fire and confusion. Radios transmitted instructions no unit could execute simultaneously. Survivors converged accidentally, then scattered again under sudden attack. Coordination dissolved completely, turning strength into vulnerability. Each Panther destroyed reinforced the belief that resistance invited immediate death, accelerating flight, abandonment, collapse through self-reinforcing terror rather than calculated tactical withdrawal or deliberate sacrifice. American units exploited radio chaos deliberately, striking command vehicles first, severing leadership nodes. German frequencies filled with overlapping screams, pleas, and static. Control evaporated utterly. The brigade's collapse was audible before it was visible. A sonic record of defeat unfolding faster than maps could record. Faster than orders could travel. Faster than courage could compensate for systemic disintegration under unexpected conditions. When silence finally replaced panic, it signaled annihilation, not recovery. Radios went dead because crews were dead, fleeing, or captured. Of 58 Panthers committed, only fragments remained operational. The brigade's collapse illustrated a brutal truth. Modern warfare punished rigidity mercilessly, rewarding adaptability, speed, and decentralized initiative while shattering formations unable to comprehend rapidly changing realities shaped by weather, technology, psychology, human limits. At dusk the remnants regrouped, counting hulls instead of hopes, discovering only 8 Panthers still mobile, a number that mocked every assumption behind the operation, transforming confidence into cold arithmetic, where losses spoke louder than ideology, doctrine, promises, or furor decrees, revealing catastrophe through simple subtraction under fading light across the shattered Lorraine fields. 8 machines rolled back through fog and smoke, each survivor a ledger entry marking burned crews, wasted fuel, broken radios, and abandoned doctrine, while commanders recalculated reality, recognizing that numerical superiority had inverted brutally, turning 58 dispatched Panthers into an equation ending with humiliation, shock, disbelief, and irreversible operational failure. The return column exposed strategic bankruptcy, because modern battle punished concentration without adaptability, revealing how speed, coordination, and perception outweighed armor thickness, as American units converted weather into weaponry, forcing German planners to confront that arithmetic favored flexible systems, not heroic hardware. Once surprise dissolved into chaos amid fog, fire, panic. Crews who survived spoke of minutes stretching into lifetimes, of unseen attackers, of radios screaming nonsense, and of orders collapsing, their testimonies forming a grim balance sheet where every mile advanced cost multiple tanks, proving that tactical miscalculation multiplied losses faster than factories could replace steel, men, training, or time. For German headquarters the figure 8 became a symbol, circulating upward as stark evidence, eroding faith in last-minute miracles, undermining propaganda claims, and forcing acknowledgement that battlefield math now punished rigidity, where attrition rates ignored rhetoric, and survival demanded decentralization, improvisation, and humility absent from late-war command culture. American after-action reports reduced victory to numbers as well, tallying kills, losses, fuel, and time, concluding that aggressive reconnaissance and rapid exploitation collapsed enemy formations cheaply, demonstrating that modern arithmetic rewarded those who created multiple dilemmas simultaneously, ensuring opponents solved none effectively before collapse rendered calculations irrelevant on contested European battlefields. The 8 Panthers limping home could not mask destroyed crews left behind, nor conceal the strategic message. Quality mattered less than integration, as isolated excellence died quickly, while networks of scouts, radios, and fast guns multiplied effectiveness, rewriting equations that German doctrine once dominated during earlier campaigns under very different conditions. Survivors described shame heavier than armor, Understanding their machines had been defeated by organization and tempo, not bravery, as post-battle tallies circulated, converting heroism into percentages, attrition curves, and resupply gaps. Metrics that erased romance and exposed systemic failure across planning, execution, and command assumptions within collapsing operational environments. Returning Panthers forced brutal recalculation of future operations, shrinking ambitions, altering deployment patterns, and reinforcing defensive postures. As commanders learned that committing elite equipment without informational dominance invited disaster, because enemies leveraging speed and surprise rewrote odds faster than reinforcements could arrive, or doctrines adapt under relentless operational pressure. The arithmetic echoed beyond Lorraine, influencing Allied confidence and German despair, showing that attrition favored learning organizations where mistakes were corrected quickly, while rigid hierarchies bled strength. Thus, 8 survivors became proof that wars were won by systems thinking, not singular weapons or nostalgic memories of past triumphs under industrialized modern warfare. For Montefiore, the count was personal, 8 machines representing professional failure rather than mere loss. As calculations once trusted betrayed him, teaching that context trumped capability, and that ignoring environment, enemy adaptation, and tempo transformed calculated risks into catastrophic gambles measured brutally by surviving steel amid collapsing operational realities everywhere. When the brigade's ledger closed, 8 Panthers returning from 58 marked the end of illusion, a numerical epitaph for outdated assumptions, reminding all observers that warfare's harshest judge was arithmetic, indifferent to pride, ideology, or intent, recording outcomes with merciless clarity that shaped campaigns thereafter across the Western Front. The failure of German armor on September 18, 1944, was not the result of inferior machines, but of circumstances beyond doctrine, where fog, terrain, and American tactical ingenuity combined to neutralize the Panthers' long-range advantage, forcing commanders to rely on instincts instead of calculations, transforming confident plans into chaotic lethal improvisation that no blueprint could anticipate. General Montefiore had counted on concentrated firepower and superior guns, believing that Panther armor would dominate Sherman tanks. But Patton's forces exploited the environment, using visibility, mobility, and small unit coordination to create opportunities, where speed and observation replaced thickness and caliber, demonstrating that modern armored warfare demanded flexibility, situational awareness, and rapid adaptation over rigid reliance on technical superiority alone. Patton's Third Army continued moving because the Americans understood momentum as a force multiplier, exploiting German miscalculations while maintaining initiative, which allowed smaller, lighter forces to strike with precision, force withdrawals, and sustain advance, proving that operational tempo often mattered more than raw armor, where every delay or hesitation magnified losses and converted potential advantage into catastrophic attrition. American commanders, including Lieutenant Colonel Kraton Abrams, recognized that the fog provided a tactical equalizer, allowing fast-moving units to engage enemy armor at close quarters, where superior numbers and firepower were irrelevant, and where aggressive maneuver, communication, and disciplined coordination ensured that German tactical doctrine, optimized for open terrain and long sight lines, failed under restrictive conditions. German crews were overwhelmed by chaos, radio breakdowns, and disorientation, while American Hellcats and tanks exploited flanks and rear positions, forcing the enemy into reactive, fragmented responses, illustrating that training, initiative, and adaptability could overcome numerical concentration, technological superiority, and the psychological edge often assumed to favor seasoned Panther crews in direct confrontation scenarios. Patton's focus on exploiting gaps, maintaining supply lines, and protecting flanks allowed Third Army to avoid strategic paralysis, proving that operational success required more than tank numbers, as American forces combined artillery, infantry, and reconnaissance to create multiple dilemmas simultaneously, forcing German commanders to react to crises rather than implement plans, which multiplied errors and accelerated collapse. The arithmetic of battle favored the Americans, as every Panther destroyed or disabled increased the relative advantage of faster units, while German command rigidity prevented rapid reassessment, showing that quantitative superiority was insufficient when qualitative factors fog, terrain leadership, communication interacted to neutralize theoretical advantages and amplify vulnerabilities in high-tempo operations. Patton's insistence on maintaining movement reflected strategic understanding, where delay would have allowed Germans to regroup, repair, or redeploy, potentially restoring their superior firepower. demonstrating that decisive action under uncertainty created compounded opportunities which exploited enemy errors, mitigated risks, and allowed smaller or less technologically advanced forces to achieve disproportionate effects.